Welcome to podcast number 2. Today we're going to review Gary Vaynerchuk's book, Crush It. Crush It is a blueprint that you need to turn your passion into a profession, and will give you the tools to turn yourself into a brand, leveraging social media and producing great content and reaping the financial benefits with it. We're going to have Sean Hirst on the board today, and he'll be joining us to discuss exactly what he got from Crush It and how we can be using it to move forward in life. This is the Innovate podcast. This is podcast number 2. All right, I've got Sean Hirst on the call tonight. This is the second podcast, and today we're going to talk a little bit about Crush It. So, Sean, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit and tell the crew what you're all about?
In IT, been in IT for a while, into robotics and programming and robotics, autonomous robotics, and pretty much just a family kind of guy that's raising a single son and has a wife, and that's about it.
Yeah, and he definitely got his looks from the wife, not from you, dude.
It's probably true.
Yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit about Crush It and Gary Vaynerchuk. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce his name, but he's absolutely huge on YouTube right now and other platforms. I was watching something from him the other day, and he was talking about back in the day, it used to be CNBC, NBC, TBS, all the major networks, and that's what you had to do to get ahead, at least to be known, so you could drive sales and traffic towards yourself. So if you became an expert in that media, you were great. But today it's the Twitters, the Instagrams, the Facebooks, the Pinterest, Snapchat, and things like that. So he says those are the new wave of media, and I think that's really a lot of what this book's about, right, Sean?
Yeah, it's about taking your passion and being real within the space that you know about, and not trying to fit within a mold, but actually being yourself and allowing yourself to talk about what your passion is, and building that over a period of time, to where people that are interested in the same topic or care about it will follow you, and your medium is your whatever's out there, YouTube, Twitter, all those things. And there's even platforms that aggregate all of those, and will Twitter push all to one feed and even clean it up for you just by using the service. And then he talks about from one media type to another, where if you mention him or say he mentioned somebody else, it's like a feedback mechanism where if you're not authentic, the other people will know that, and immediately not want to watch your podcast or listen to you anymore. So you really have to be authentic with what you're doing, and as long as you know about what you're talking about, people will want to catch on to that, and out of the woodwork and out of pushing the love out there of what you do, things will just come your way. Pretty much put it out there and let it come your way.
And so does he use a platform because it costs a lot of time to go from platform to platform, as far as trying to post to Twitter, trying to post to Facebook, trying to post to Google Plus or Pinterest or what have you. If you spend all your time doing that, that's a full-time job. So does he recommend any platforms or anything?
He talks about a few that were coming out. The book was written a couple of years ago, I believe, but I don't remember the exact ones, but it's more like a dashboard where you can do one stream or one push, and then it'll aggregate them all out. I can't remember off the top of my head what those were, but I'm sure it was in chapter 8. Like some all, I think if I remember on top of my head, there was Fedent or something like that would do Tumblr, Instagram, Twitter, and all of them in one, where you push one thing and it would go across all platforms. And they're, pretty much free. And he always talks about how, the big companies have to use large money but doing just this one tweet or one thing, it would push across multiple platforms, and you would get a much wider audience than a single billboard that may cost you, $5,000 or $10,000 a month. What he did with his wines, his wine business, where he took a billboard out somewhere in New York, and he would see it every day, but it only, brought in a lower percentage of wine orders versus his multimedias that, brought in 20, a lot more. I can't remember the percentage more, but I know it was a gross sum of 20% or more versus just a single billboard, and how it was free versus the cost that he paid for the one billboard. So that kind of speaks volumes for the platform, and everything's been leveled as far as a playing field, as long as you're authentic and know what you're talking about and love what you do.
Yeah, so he talked a lot about how he grew up, and it sounded to me like he was working in that. I was going to say it's a liquor store, right? But maybe it wasn't a liquor store. Was it a family liquor store? I think he was talking about.
Yeah, it was his parents' liquor store, and then they had a wine section, and he just kind of found a niche that the brands that you feel would come in for Johnny Walker or the brand names for liquor, but it wasn't like a tasting thing where he could read about wines, and he would find that, and be able to talk people into buying more at his family store. When he became of age, he could start tasting, and instead of using high and low notes, and he would actually give them real names, like it actually tasted like a shoebox or a shoe. He would give it real themes and be really excited about it. The guy's very animated. So he kind of just was his authentic self and gave different names to tasting wines, and people really liked it. And that's kind of how it's grown. And now he's become more of a performance or motivational type speaker and writer, where I think he's written 4 or 5 books. Crush It.
I think he's got
Thank You Economy.
Yeah,
Jab, Hit Back, and something else.
Yeah, he's definitely got more than a couple of books on being sold right now. Crush It was written, like you said, in 2009. So I guess that was a little bit early for some of the social media platforms, as far as being able to spray to multiple social media platforms with a single dashboard. I was doing a quick YouTube survey. I was doing a quick Google search there, and there seems like there's a lot of platforms that can actually manage those individual social media platforms for you from a single dashboard. So I think that's probably the way to go. And if you talk about, I think it was in his first chapter, it was looking at your passion, right? And he talked a lot about turning yourself into a brand. So do you remember anything specific about how you actually market yourself and turn yourself into a brand?
Yeah, you always have an authentic state, and you never deviate from that or try to be fake. And just put your content out there, and maybe you go to each forum or to different forums that talk about the topic that you like, and read what people are talking about and comment back. And he always, everybody he can, in a personal message, he says, you have to work late, get up early, work late, and do all these podcasts and respond to people and do it over again every day. And eventually you'll have people coming out of the woodwork to, that want to use you as a platform for your knowledge, and want to use your podcast to advertise their product. He had companies just coming into him, want him to advertise their product through what he talked about, because he had so many followers. As your following grows, and as people retweet what you tweet, or you tweet somebody else's, and it's kind of a favor back to a favor, or if people like it, they will retweet it, and then it just compounds from there. As you grow, then more and more companies will become involved, especially in the space that you talk about, and then they'll eventually come to you, as long as you're authentic and you maintain that, and just work at it. He says it's it's day in, day out. It's not easy work, it's hard work. You just got to keep doing it and grinding, as you like to say, grind.
Yeah, definitely get up and grind. I think that's something that is inbred in yourself. I'm not sure if people can learn it or not. I often, as you do too, Sean, we're the first ones in the office in the morning, and typically the last ones to leave, and it just surprises me the entitlement of individuals coming into the office around 10 o'clock, and 2 hours later they're on lunch, and then at the end of the day they're heading off at 4:30. It's something surprising to me to actually feel good about collecting a paycheck when you don't put the type of hours in that I believe you should. So that's something that's inherent in myself. I'm definitely an extreme hard worker, and I think the only person on the planet that I know personally, now I know there's tons of other people that don't sleep, but the only other person that works harder is the guy that I'm talking to right now. That's you, Sean.
Yeah, I still struggle with that self promotion, but I like to think I do.
Yeah, you definitely do, and I think it's the value that you add, and something that I always appreciated about you, and the book talked a lot about this as well, was that you take those challenges head on, and then you execute against those challenges, and even though it is hard work, the end result is that you've accomplished something, and typically you've accomplished something that nobody else could do.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So the book's basically built out in a set of lessons. So you had talked a little bit about before about choosing a medium that fits your personality. So if you were looking at the Sean Hirst brand, what sort of platform do you think you should be attacking next?
I mean, if I really thought about what I would do, I'm not one for being on video or anything, so I'd be more of a podcast or Twitter maybe, to do, anything that I would do, but it'd probably be along those lines. I don't think I could do the in video or whatnot. It's I have always had that, shyness about me that I think I kind of was self-learned from, family, but I think it would just probably be Twitter or something of that nature where it's a podcast.
Yeah, I'm quite enjoying the podcasts myself. I got this studio set up now so they can actually deal with them, and I hope to have you on again. We'll talk a lot about some of the innovation stuff that I'm working on, and how that process actually changes things. I was talking to a company today called Soltech, and they're typically a staffing augmentation group, but they're starting to expand too into the innovation space, and they've got a whole series going on right now that they're bringing innovators in from Atlanta and they do a video, not a video podcast, they do an audio podcast and talk to those people in Atlanta. And there was one gentleman on today, and he was talking about how he believes innovation's a buzzword right now. And so over the last week or so, I've been taking a look at at Twitter and seeing what's going on from an innovation standpoint, specifically local to Atlanta. And I'm seeing a lot of the larger companies now setting up these innovation studios. And as you know, that was something that I did for Anthem, set up that innovation studio from a information technology perspective. I learned a lot about running workshops by being involved in 15 or 20 workshops there, and I've continued to do those workshops at the other places that I go to. And so this book talked a lot about passions and how to turn those passions into something that you do on a daily basis, and you turn it into, I was going to call it a job, but he didn't call it a job, he called it a profession. And I've taken that point and actually started to drive home these innovation workshops, specifically at my existing company, and everybody that's gone through one of these workshops there has got very excited at the end of it. So, that's what I've taken away from this book is, go with your passion and then turn it into a profession, and that's certainly the track that I'm trying to follow right now.
I mean, I could definitely see you definitely always in the leader space of innovation and leading groups of people to what they need to do, the way you lead and the way you allow people to do what they need to do in order to accomplish the job at hand.
Yeah. So out of some of the other lessons in the book, was there any other lessons that you really stand out as something that was eye-opening. And again, it might have been something that, well, yeah, I already knew that, but it just took you to actually read this to go, hey, I knew it, but I just wasn't executing on it.
And the main takeaways was, the you can be yourself even if one person doesn't like it, two others will like it, and you'll find a following, and not to deviate from who you are in order to fit a molding. By doing that, people can city, and I think that that rings true on many levels. The more and more that the playing field becomes level for companies versus individuals, I think that the more you hold fast to exactly what he said about staying true to your values and what you really think of things, I think that, that really rang a bell with me, because, you always see, even in your day-to-day life, you're always trying to give a label or fit a mold, but he went off and went the opposite direction, and by doing that created a massive following, and launched his other career. And now the wine shop isn't even his main income, it's his social media and his books and just being himself, as he said.
Yeah, you talked a little bit about him, the way he drove, starting in the wine shop and then moving through to this social media. And then you brought up the point that these tools were only available to mega wealthy companies in the past. And something I've noticed just setting up this studio in my basement here is that for less than $400, I've been able to get multiple cameras with multiple angles, get some equipment to capture the recording. And this, even 10 years ago, would have cost probably $150,000 to have set up to get the quality that we've got today for less than $400. And not only that, that crew of people to be able to switch between cameras and take different angles and do what they needed to do. And there's probably 7 people behind the scenes, not only a person lugging around a 70-pound camera or multiple people lugging around cameras, but you had people in studio rooms, driving what people were seeing and switching between scenes and things like that. And the tools are now available to just about anybody, and streaming costs nothing. So it's just amazing to me that this was so easy to set up and able to execute on for so little money.
It's really powerful what technology provides, and I think that's going back to your innovation center, that's why a lot of companies are investing in that. And I don't think that innovation is a buzzword. I think that that's how business works. And when you look at that and the platforms that are available, the only way you can survive is to innovate. So I think it was a different book, but innovate or die almost in the case going forward. As Google and Facebook and all of them to look to AI to help them out in the future, I think the next wave is going to be the robotics.
Yeah, definitely automation is something big, and like you're finding out now with the work that you're doing, at home in your garage around those robotics, it doesn't take a massive budget anymore to get access to the tooling and get access to the equipment that you need to be able to build something that's very innovative and very special. You go back 10 years, what would it cost you to put the electronics together to be able to do that, let alone the cost of the motors? I mean, you're probably talking $2,000-$3,000 for one of those motors that are, you'd know better what they cost now, but and then not only that, the accuracy of the GPS and coordinates like that. So do you want to talk a little bit about what you have put together and how that works?
It's basically using Arduinos to control step motors that that record the stepping and then play it back along with GPS coordinates that tell it where it's at, and to ensure that the track is moving forward. without giving too much of what it is and how it works. But those step motors cost about $25 a piece for a really high quality one, and then the Arduinos, which it teaches kids how to program. It's physical programming. Basically, you're using C++ to control electrical impulses, varying from 0 to 5, to control lights, step motor, GPS, um, that whole stack is what I'm using to create the bot. And there's a lot of challenges um, in coordinating it all. One component may not be able to do the full round trip of another, but you can upgrade, just for $5 more, and that's what I've done, 2 or 3 times to find the right combination to get the accuracy correct for what I'm, building.
Okay, is there what type of equipment do you need? You talked about as far as the locationing and the positioning. What are you using for the GPS? I know that you're also tracking revolutions in motors to determine how far it went, right? But
yeah, so the GPS is actually a GPS shield that uses the satellite GPS just like it does in your phone to record where you're at. So it does a check every so often, and it records where you're at as the machine is moving. At the same time, those step motors record the number of revolutions forward or backward to a micro SD card that would then be uploaded to a Mongo database. So those shields all plug on top of a single Arduino that is controlled through C++ programming, that then ultimately goes back to REST APIs in a Mongo database that is inside my house. So it uses a GSM shield on top of that. So there's technically 4 shields that are in play with a single Arduino. The GPS shield, the motor shield, the SD card shield, and then the GPS shield, and they're all controlled through a single Arduino.
Yeah,
that lives within this motor bot.
So how did you figure all this out?
So I kind of got interested at somebody, I think, actually the last location you and I worked at with Anthem. One of the guys started talking about him and his son doing lights outside their house, controlling lights with music. And I said, "How are you doing that?" And he kind of told me, and I was like, "Oh, what else can I do?" So I just started, Googling around like, anybody else, and, found out that it controls all these things. And then on top of that, it was programming. So it was called physical programming, where if you wrote 10 lines of code, you could control like a Christmas light that would do something. You could control whatever you wanted, and then the add-ons are very cheap, and it's very cheap to get into. And actually they're using it to teach kids how to program, and they'll build little things here and there. And then I started getting deeper into it, and then an idea started to pop into my head that I'm working on that I see out there, but the technologies that are out there is kind of old. It's more of a bump and play type of technology versus an intelligent record and playback scenario. So that's kind of where it all started.
So what do you mean by bump and play?
Well, the comparable thing that I'm doing is it requires an installation of a wire to control the robot that just wanders around aimlessly. It knows where it's at because of the wire that goes around. It senses the wire when it reaches and turns back around. That's kind of a dumb way. It's called a dumb bot, where it just moves forward until it says, "Oh, I hit something," or "I hit the perimeter," and it turns around and goes around the other way. Where this one intelligently just plays back exactly the way it was recorded the first time, and then has sensors on it to know where it's at and if anything else is around it.
Right. So what's the next steps for that particular project for you?
I have hooked up the motors and worked on the code for the motors and the steppers and the recording device for the SD cards. So the next step is the GPS and GSM shield, which shouldn't be too bad. They're just, telling it GPS recording every so often or whenever it turns, and then the the GSM shield just hooks up to Verizon and sends it back to whatever phone number or IP address I want. So it's like an internet connection, and it then uploads the data from the SD card for that particular GPS location, and then it finishes.
Yeah, it sounds very exciting as far as what you've had to do and the number of pieces of technology that you put together. Can you relate that back to anything else that you've worked on in the past? I mean, like at one of the other companies or anything like that. Some rubber bands come to mind at a place we used to work that used to keep things moving around.
Oh yeah, you're talking about automated pharmacy lines that you and I kind of worked with in parallel there. Yeah, I mean those actually that's kind of actually that if I really had to think about it, that's where it kind of got started for me, was working on those automated pharmacy lines that would drop the pills, count the pills, push the pharmaceuticals down the line, and then slap the labels on them, and then allow the humans to do what they needed to do within their job. So if I really thought about it, it would actually trace back to that, and then just putting the next piece of the puzzle together, which would be the Arduino that I learned at the next job from just by accident.
Yeah. So again, it's taken a lot of experimentation or a lot of other projects to come together to do this. It's probably something that you can see people doing on a bigger scale, like a Tesla or what have you. They start on something, and in their particular case, I don't know what they did before the Roadster came out, but the Roadster was a starting point, and it was a good thing that they kept the company going through that, because there was a lot of problems with that thing being reliable. And now they're moving on to the Model S, and now of course the latest model, the Model 3, and just to watch that evolution and how fast that's accelerated, and typical car companies, how long they normally take to come into the market and put product out, and Tesla's severely or accelerating that process. So I can see how these types of innovations come together, and how people start to put multiple pieces of technology together to build something innovative, and that's certainly what you've done, at least in your garage right now.
Yeah, I would agree with that, definitely.
Well, any other last minute thoughts before we close the podcast for tonight?
No, I think the definitely read the book if you haven't. His ideas are definitely future forward looking, and something that anybody could get into, whether you're 10 years old all the way up to 80 or 90. As long as you've got a passion, just figure out what it is and talk about it and do those mediums, and you should be able to find like-minded people.
Yeah, well, I'm certainly taking the advice to move the podcast forward with innovation. So I know you're one of the most innovative people that I've worked with in the past, so you'll certainly be back on here talking about other innovative things. And I appreciate you joining me tonight, and thanks a lot for coming on the second podcast. I really appreciate it.
Definitely. Thanks for having me on, man.
All right, man. Thanks. Bye.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You'll never have the sacred stone. Oh, this you crazy mother...